The college basketball transfer portal is closed. Well, has Mick Cronin done enough? Well, a lot of people disagree.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this show your first listen each and every day. It's free where we get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, download. Thanks for your support. It's your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Where we get started today, the transfer portal is closed. Not college football. That's still a couple days away. For college basketball, though, it's closed. All right. So on the men's and the women's side, the players entering the portal, unless they're a grad transfer or their coach leaves or some other extenuating circumstance that I don't know, it is closed. So the people in there can still commit. They can still recruit. We can still figure out where they're going, but there will be no new names entered that we know of, barring a coaching change. So that begs the question. A lot of these rankings, a lot of these prognostications for UCLA and other teams start to look a little more accurate, start to feel a little more accurate as of today to May to June, while these rosters begin to get finalized. So why is it so puzzling to determine, did Mick Cronin do enough? Did he not do enough? Is UCLA, as John Rothstein of CBS Sports puts it, a top 4 team in the country? Or if you look at ESPN's way too early top 25 rankings from Jeff Borzello, you've got them as a 14-15 team in the country, top 15 in the country, all great places to be. Let's not get this wrong. Great places to be. But there is a complete difference between being a top 4 team versus a top 15 team, right? You look at being a top 4 team, what was the Final Four comprised of this year? All 1 seeds. Those are the top 4 teams in the country. For just the second time in the tournament's history. Ironically, the last time being in 2008 when UCLA was one of those teams. And that involves some returners of Ben Howland age, where Mick Cronin's trying to get his team back to the Final Four for the first time since 2021 and win the whole thing. All right, he's trying to win the whole thing. While if you're a 15 team in the country, number 15th in the way too early top 25, that means you're pushing a 4 seed. The top 4 seed's great. That also means if you're looking at an NCAA tournament, if you're looking at it from this lens, you would potentially be facing a 13 seed that's tough, a 12 seed in the second round that's tough. Oh, by the way, you face a 1 seed in the Sweet 16. And then we're writing the same story as this last year, right? You're facing a top seed in the Sweet 16. You're starting to have to get through upset lane to make it to this second weekend, to make it to the third weekend, get from the Sweet 16 to the Elite 8. That's the difference between, okay, UCLA is a clear-cut favorite versus they're good and we'll see how they play during the year. And this is all with the same roster. This is Donovan Dent. This is Sky Clark, Eric Daly Jr., Bilodeau, Xavier Booker, Steven Jamerson, Trent Perry, Brandon Williams mixed in there. All right. You've got the likes of Jamar Brown. What is this UCLA team going to turn into? Maybe I've forgotten a name or two. I've talked about this quite a bit. Has Cronin done enough? Well, with the departure of Adai Mara, it feels like no. With him going to Michigan and seeing how Michigan in some rankings is ranked higher or just as high as UCLA in this preseason rankings by fortifying their front court after losing Danny Wolf, after losing their starting point guard who torched UCLA with a lot of made threes at Pauley Pavilion. With losing Vlad Golden, they replenished their roster and restocked with size and talent. UCLA went after a big swing in some lower profile players, which doesn't make it feel like a win. I don't think Cronin's done enough in my mind to warrant a top 4 preseason ranking. Now, Donovan Dent alone and what Cronin can do with the returning players, with what he can do just maybe with Booker or getting something out of Jamerson or the veteran savvy I would expect from Jamar Brown coming from UMKC, UCLA is going to be good. They'll be competitive. Cronin's going to have them working near the top of the Big Ten race and competitive against some of the better teams in the country. And now that you have a true floor general, I think something that Mick Cronin's lacked, as everybody has said since Tiger Campbell graduated, You mix in, hopefully, Bilodeau playing at the 4 and Daly Jr. more towards the 3, unless the Bruins go small, and that still yielded successful results in the previous season. Now, a lot of those players coming back expected to contribute a little bit more. A talented player at the point guard spot, hopefully a lot more shots and a lot more threes attempted from Sky Clark. That's still a recipe for success. Yet college basketball is leaning more towards the favorites, even a couple of seasons after we saw another 16-1 upset, the NIL, the transfer portal, everybody upgrading, going from mid-major to power conference to mid-major power to power conference team to super power conference team. We're seeing teams be very top-heavy near the top of college basketball. So the clear answer is no, Mick Cronin did not do enough to be a preseason top 4 team. They can turn themselves into one. They can be a team that plays extremely good defense and surprises and develops and be a top 15, top 10 team. So in that regard, did they do enough to be a top 4 team? No. Are they good enough? Well, obviously, with the huge addition of Donovan Dent, with what they put out there in NIL, what Cronin has talked about again and again and again the last couple of years, NIL, the support, having, the Cincinnati Reds wanted free agents, but the Dodgers all got them. Well, the Bruins are acting like the freaking Dodgers a little bit. They got a big player in the transfer portal with Dent. That cannot be understated throughout the whole entirety of the season. Somebody who is exactly what Mick Cronin has been looking for these last couple of seasons from Dylan Andrews. Maybe at times last year, Sky Clark or Sebastian Mack, and they're just not those types of players. Donovan Dent commands the respect and the time and the team's respect, the leadership that he'll be bringing. He is a new face and a new voice and a new leader into a locker room that has a bunch of guys that played for Mick Cronin a year ago and immediately brought UCLA to a lot more respect in the Big Ten than they did in their last year in the Pac-12. That's just a fact. Now, it wasn't good enough to go deep in the tournament, but this year, definitely a second weekend team. Now, are they good enough to be a national championship team? That's going to come down to bracket breakdowns, come down to how things shake out in a year, and how much this team develops. Has Cronin done enough? Again, the big question. To be a top 4 preseason team? No. This is where he's got to go to work coaching-wise. Maybe steal another player or two, because these players can still commit. There are still players out there. There's still a house settlement against with the NCAA involved, where maybe some of the best players in the portal right now are looking to get a 5th year of eligibility because they've exhausted all 4 or 5 or 6 years. If you mix in a JUCO, an injury, a COVID year, some of these players and some of the best players that aren't exactly testing international, professional waters, NBA waters in some regards, or NBA, they will find themselves potentially as late free agents that could certainly change things if there's a 5th year awarded to some of these players. So it's not like there's not players out there for Cronin to get. Maybe one more signee, maybe not. The team is good enough to compete and be entertaining next year, just with Donovan Dent alone and some of the depth adds for Cronin in the post. Not flashy, but enough for Cronin to succeed, and he's proven he can do that before. I would love to see him add maybe one more wing, maybe another player in the post that could change things. I've talked about Leo Curtis from Iceland, who decommitted from Arizona State. But until proven otherwise, this is what UCLA's rolling with. And it's still good enough to be a top 15 team. If that's the worst you're starting with, then we can start. If the bottom is a 15th ranked team in the country, then Mick Cronin can grow from there. He'll try to manage their egos and expectations, but that's a lot better than it's been the last couple of years. And I still believe in UCLA's opportunity to succeed next season, even without a Diamara and some true post play. Next, though, on Locked On UCLA, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on with Madden and Nico. Could they be in some NIL deal holdout, buyout situation with Arkansas, Tennessee? What does that look like? We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track the accounts, investments, and spending all in one place, so you just stop managing your money. You're building wealth. You'll start building your wealth. Here, take a look at this. Instead of juggling all these multiple apps you're trying to go after, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. All right, moving on here to the second segment of Locked On UCLA. We're talking more Madden and Nico. All right, and from what I've read from ESPN, from a CBS Sports article earlier in the morning, it looks like the drama in the saga is still unfolding. While it might not affect UCLA specifically, the way the deals unfolded, how these players left, what they could have done with the NIL is going to be a lot to deal with for some of these players like Nico and Madden off the field. Something that might be intriguing towards Madden Iamaleava is something that was written about in the CBS Sports article I was reading from this morning. Brandon Marcello, how he left Madden right after Nico committed to UCLA. That's the idea. Go to the portal, commit to the Bruins, still working through all those. And then the Arkansas athletic director, Hunter Yurachek, if I'm saying the name correctly there, all of a sudden it's like, hey, by the way, we're going to try and make sure that the buyout clauses in these NIL deals are becoming more of a threat, more important to these players leaving. Because you see all these guys sign mega deals, quote unquote, in the NIL saga, right? There's so many players who are making so much more money than they're actually worth, in my opinion. At any sport, some of the best players are commanding big NIL deals, and they're making more than what you would make as a rookie in the NFL or close to it. And you're in college as an 18, 19-year-old, or in some cases, maybe even a 17-year-old. You've got to maintain regular appearances, regular, signees, whatever it costs, whatever it takes. And I was reading on ESPN another article written by Chris Lowe that there's still maybe another opportunity for Nico at Tennessee to, with more appearances, more obligations, to increase his NIL opportunities for even more money. And they turned it down. Nico turned it down, according to what Chris Lowe was writing in this ESPN article. So the thing is, and the debate of, will Nico stay more than a year? What is Madden? What's the QB situation looking like? That's why I'm hesitant to say Nico is going to stay more than a year. In this article by Chris Lowe talking about the months-long breakup between the Iamaleavas, Nico, and Tennessee, there was Tennessee sources written about in this article about get through 2025 and Nico is gone to the NFL or to the portal, because he was basically gone after this last year at Tennessee, he was almost maybe gone in the winter, most likely gone after this year. And what's to guarantee that as talented as the kid is, he's going to stay? Well, I think Deshaun Foster says, we're going to gamble. We're going to risk it. He says, I want the smoke. Not verbatim, but with his article, with his words, talking to the media, we want it. It's a clear upgrade over Joey Aguilar, who was by no means bad under Tino Sinceri in those limited opportunities working during spring practice. But Nico represented an upgrade with the talent, the physicality, the local nature of the recruitment to UCLA, and ability of sorts for Deshaun Foster to build a quarterback succession from Nico to Madden and maintain UCLA stability at quarterback for 1 to 2, maybe 3 years at possible, maximum 4 to 5 in these next few seasons as the Bruins continue to chart on, uneasy waters in the Big Ten, that they barely stayed afloat in year one. They impressed more than some might have after we saw them play in week one, but it's one thing to stay afloat. It's another thing to compete and dominate like Oregon and Michigan and Ohio State year after year. And that's what Deshaun went after with Nico Iamaleava. The thing I'm talking about with Madden, though, is Arkansas Edge was the deal he signed, the collective signed with Arkansas. Madden, who you remember committed to UCLA, flipped at the last moment. I remember talking to a source of sorts about how there's clearly some backroom deals, some behind the room negotiating, even with Madden committed to UCLA. They were looking, Madden's camp, for deals even after they'd already committed to UCLA. And according to the CBS Sports article by Brad Marcello, it was a $500,000 freshman deal of sorts signed at Arkansas for a year. And while you can hit to the portal, the problem is if you don't fulfill all your obligations, fulfill all the signatures, appearances, whatever it comes through with an NIL deal for a guy of that stature, 4-star freshman quarterback coming in, who might not even play, which is crazy that you can command a $500,000 deal as a youngster that may or may not play, comes in, and after his family visits him in Arkansas, sees his brother go to UCLA, tells the staff he's homesick, and then Arkansas's own AD says, hey, buyout clause. You had 8 months remaining in your contract. You might have to pay up to half that money back, 6 figures worth, back to the Arkansas collectives. Maybe Tennessee might do the same thing, and this is where this thing is slowly building into the future of NIL contracts, where these quarterbacks, or not just quarterbacks, these players might be bound to 2 seasons at their respective universities instead of just endless free agency. The entertainment is always there with the portal, but practicality is not. The academics is not. The idea of a student athlete is dead. And until we really move things forward, whether we get to a 5-year opportunity for athletes, which it seems like we might be going to that, we're going to start seeing these continual buyouts enforced by the collectives. And I'm wondering if UCLA might have to do the same thing with the Iamaleavas if they pull something after this season, during this season, if they're not happy with UCLA. Now the kids are, especially Nico, confirmed, and he's at UCLA. He's still finishing things up at Tennessee academically before he heads into UCLA to prepare for the upcoming season. But Madden, this is a unique situation where, depending on how much they might have to pay back to Arkansas or Tennessee, and this is more focused on Madden right now, how much is that going to affect UCLA and what they have to give these players, these guys, their representatives, and what they're going to be commanding with NIL asks from UCLA? Because they're going to have to pay back these teams. And how much will that shortchange the Bruins in the future when they're going after top recruits? The Iamaleavas have continually said, hey, it was because of the offensive line, the lack of receivers at Tennessee for Nico. Well, if the Bruins are going to be stuck having to pay, quote unquote, for them leaving Arkansas, them leaving Tennessee, where is that going to hurt them in the future, where they can't go win a recruiting battle for a local receiver in the portal or go win one for a youngster right in their own backyard in the recruiting hotbed of Southern California? So that's something to look forward to. Now, it's not guaranteed, but how are the schools and the players both honoring NIL contracts? And that might change between direct revenue sharing, the idea of 2-year contracts, maybe 3-year contracts, and how can you escape a deal like some of these players are attempting or trying to do, take all the money and run into the portal for a new opportunity or searching for more money? Will that hurt UCLA in the long run? I'm not sure. But when we maybe deal with this situation, whether it's Nico, whether it's Madden, or somebody in the future, how much are these schools going to be like, hey, we want at least some of the money back because you didn't fulfill all your obligations? And how much are the NIL deals going to be bigger just because the players have to offset what they're paying the university back from what they did not do when they transferred away and not fulfilling their NIL deals? It's a fascinating topic. Could be over our heads and when we just want to talk football, but it is something to look out for in the future, maybe the near future, with the House versus the NCAA settlements. Meanwhile, the Bruins are just trying to say, hey, we got our quarterback. We swung for the fences for a top-tier quarterback, Big Kai in the pocket, who is going to run with Tino Sinceri and make this team a legitimate, fun team to watch. And hopefully we can get to that right now. We're waiting for Nico to officially get his way to UCLA, finish things up at Tennessee, and then we can get ready to rock and roll. Speaking of rocking and rolling, UCLA women's basketball, if you look at the early top 25, they have also plummeted, if you will, not to the number one spot, but further down. What does that mean? We'll talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On UCLA podcast, Zach with you guys, talking UCLA women's hoops. All right. So what's interesting is UCLA, right after the season, preseason number 1 in the next year, clear-cut number 1 team in the country. They got the Big Ten Sixth Player of the Year. They've got London Jones. They've got all these freshmen with all these superstars, like the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year in Lauren Betts, Kiki Rice. You've got a couple of first 10, all first 10 big teamers, whatever. I'm getting all mixed up, right? They're the first team, all Big Ten members. You've got some honorable mentions on the all-conference teams, players who are highly sought after in their high school recruiting age, in the transfer portal. UCLA had a stacked roster. 6 players leave. UCLA hasn't brought in a single player in the portal. Now, 2 highly coveted recruits. You've got Bilic from the international recruiting. You mix in Sienna Betts, the younger sister of Lauren Betts, and that's supposed to offset some of the transfers and players leaving the program, all right? Most of them have found new homes. London Jones, USC, Janiah Barker, Tennessee, I believe Zania to Indiana. I think some of the others have gone to other places in the Big Ten. For now, though, UCLA is trying to recruit Gianna Kneepkins. And if they do get a commitment, they would immediately go from number 3 in the country to number 1. UCLA has fallen in Charlie Cream's way too early, top 25, from number 1 to number 3. And you're like, okay, that doesn't mean much. But the fact that they lost so much, and it's a lot of players, a lot of depth, not the top, not maybe the majority of your starting 5, but you mix in, what are they losing? What can the Bruins bring in? If they bring in Kneepkins, they are back to number 1. I talked about this in the last Locked On UCLA episode. You bring in Kneepkins, they will be number 1 in the country, and they'll be back, and they will take away an opportunity of a player that caliber who, if you look at the WNBA draft boards for next year, a year from now, she's in that top 10 list. And if you're talking about somebody who is that highly coveted as a professional a year from now, as a professional basketball player, and she's that highly sought after in the portal, UCLA in the short list of 4 teams for Kneepkins, you win that. You have a near 20-point per game score, an elite shooter who can do multiple things, played well with Utah in the Big 12. You turn that into a UCLA Bruin, and they'll go from number 3 to number 1 again. But if they do not add Kneepkins, if they do not win this recruiting race in the transfer portal, South Carolina's had 2 big. If Kneepkins goes to South Carolina, Latson, you mix in Kneepkins with what already they're bringing back with Dawn Staley in South Carolina. If she goes to Texas, okay, you've got some talent there for sure, an elite defense with a scoring option at guard. You now bring in Oklahoma, one of the top recruits in the country, a lot of growing enthusiasm for Oklahoma Sooner women's basketball. They could make that leap like UCLA did a year or 2 ago. The Bruins are still very much in the short list of top 3 or 4 or 5 teams. But this team this year still was not enough to win the national championship. They fell well short of that, with UConn dominating them with their late season charge to number 1. The Bruins still need that X-factor player who can go out and get buckets. Now, of course, Charlize Ledger-Walker returning from injury will help. Some youngsters in Betts and Bilic will provide, I think, more than this last freshman class did, I hope. Lauren Betts, you mix in Gabby Jaquez with Kiki Rice, all those together will make a formidable team with Tamia Gardner around them to shoot the 3 ball. But if you add another player of size and skill at the wing position who can score, they will return to the preseason number 1 team and the immediate favorite to win the national championship. Because right now, they are not. A lot less depth will force Corey Close to play with, 7 to 8 versus 9 to 10 potentially. Even though one Kneepkins commitment could move that depth, move the needle significantly. That's why the Bruins need to get somebody in the portal, and Kneepkins is the right get. If she chooses elsewhere, it's not doomsday. It is, they got to get to work and see some significant improvement from Kiki Rice and help from the wing position now that London Jones is gone. And until next time, we'll talk more about the portal with it closing in college football, what Nico coming to UCLA continues to mean for UCLA with Madden, with all the transfers as that window is going to close as well. Everything and more on Locked On UCLA. Like, comment, subscribe, download, get your hands up, Bruins fans. 8 clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked on UCLA. Zach signing off. Go Bruins.